Hey, hello, this is the Millwall podcast. Today I'm hosting. My name's Joe Zampa, and I've got my co-host along with me today called Mark Whitechurch, a Millwall fan from the 80s, who's come from all the way in Montreal in Canada. How you doing, Mark?
Very good, very good. Really glad to be here today to speak to another Millwall legend.
Exactly. So this guy needs no introduction. Obviously, we spoke about it before in the past and on previous shows, along with other players. This guy was born on the 2nd of June, 1971. Originally from Walthamstow, played professional football for Bromley, played 109 times for Millwall, scoring 35 goals, and also played for Wimbledon, partly in the Premiership, with 60 caps and 11 goals. A season that spreads over 10 years from 1990 to 2000. Please welcome Jonathan Goodman.
Thank you, Joe.
Good. How you doing? You all right?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Good. Excellent. Good stuff. So we're going to go down memory lane. I feel a bit like Eamon Holmes here. Like, this is your life. Yeah. I should get like a red book out, and have all these guests appearing from behind the door.
That'd be a bit wild.
You got Brian Horn there, have you then, Joe? Or Brian Horn's there in your place, yeah?
He's just ordering a burger. It'll be here soon.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I thought so, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So John, in 1990, obviously you're a youngster, so 18, 19 years of age. You signed for Bromley at the end of the season of 1990, and you were put on an immediate contract at the time.
Yeah.
You then got the chance to sign for Millwall, but it all happened very quickly. Talk us through that. How did that actually happen?
Yeah, it did happen very quickly. So I lived in East London, played for Leighton Wingate at non-league level, and was a bit of a nearly man, like in terms of some of my mates had got into professional clubs. We had a mate, Richard Chick, who was at Millwall at the time as a schoolboy, Jason Lee, who became Pineapple Head.
Yeah,
he was at Charlton at that moment in time. So guys that I was playing school football with and Sunday football with that were in professional clubs, and I kept missing out. And so I went down a non-league route and continued to study. And as what happens in non-league, George Wakeling was the manager of Leighton Wingate. He moved to Bromley. He lives did live in Downham Way, which is just around the corner from the training ground in Bromley or Lewisham area. And George told me he'd like to take me and a number of players across to Bromley. Now, by now I'm a student, so I've just got this really old Triumph Toledo car that will just about get through the Blackwall Tunnel to get to Bromley, right? So we go across in the pre-season and we sign an agreement. I signed an agreement, and George was really good. He said to the directors at Bromley, I believe John can get a professional contract. We're going to sign him on a contract, but if a club comes in, we're not going to stop him. We're going to let him go to a club. So, and at this stage, I was 19, so I had a very good pre-season with Bromley, and had just become a man. From being a boy playing men's football to suddenly being a man playing men's football, and had a couple of games at the right time in pre-season. One against one against Millwall, a Millwall 11. So I was lucky enough that. Alan Dowson was playing centre back, and he probably didn't have the best of games, and I had a very good game. And then on the Tuesday night we played Leighton Orient, and Bob Pearson had come to watch, and George said to me before the game, listen, just a heads up, Millwall are coming to watch you again. Just play with energy and enthusiasm and see what happens. And thankfully I scored a couple of goals and played as well as I could have done. Nothing happened immediately. And then the next day I was with my dad, because I was, it was the summer, so I was helping him out. He was a glazer, and he had this big old-fashioned mobile phone that started ringing, and it was George saying, "Oh, you better get over here to my house in Downham Way and meet Bob Pearson because we've agreed a fee with Millwall." So we drove across, met Bob. Bob was amazing. Told me I'd be in the first team by Christmas. I was aware that they'd signed Paul Goddard, they had Teddy Sheringham, they had Malcolm Allen, and there's me, a 19-year-old kid. It's a bit intimidating because when I'd been to Millwall, we played a school cup final there, and the stadium was pretty, intimidating, even with not many people in it. Three sides terracing, getting in and out of the stadium was quite daunting. So, you know, your first impressions were a little bit, you know, wow, am I going to be ready for this? But, you know, agreed to contract. It was only a year's professional contract, and, you know, off we went.
Brilliant. So that was obviously, that would be the season we got relegated from what was the old first division, the top tier. Obviously, it's a bit of a rebuilding process. We still had Teddy Sheringham, as you say, at the time, who was prolific that season, scoring a lot of goals. And like you said, there's some real big players. We signed Paul Goddard for 800,000, which was our record for many, many, many years. A big sort of player for us. For you, as a 19-year-old coming into this squad, this team, I mean, what was your first day like at training? I mean, you meeting likes of Teddy Sheringham. What was Teddy Sheringham like when you first met him?
Yeah, I did a presentation about breakthrough moments the other day for a friend, and I was saying, like, there's no manual. You know, when induction, you know, you're kind of like, you're going to go and train with professional footballers, and on day one, you know, I was told you have to be clean shaven, no jeans. Bruce Rioch is a stickler for discipline. I turn up. I was a bit embarrassed about my car, so I parked on the side street and wandered in that way. Like, I think Bob or Ian Evans might have been there to welcome me in. Gave me some kit. You're not quite sure what change room to go into because there's a certain etiquette. The big boys go on the one on the left as senior players, and Terry Hurlock's coming the other way, and he hasn't had a shave or anything. I think he looks like a right scruff bag. How does he get away with that? But bumped into Teddy, and, you know, fun enough, I saw Teddy down the golf course, and, you know, Teddy's still got that uber confidence in himself. And so I was like, Ted, how are you doing? I went to the same school as you. And he just swatted me away and said, okay, well, you know,
really?
Hopefully you'll do well, and we'll see how you get on. So I've got to say, everyone was incredibly welcoming. Even lads like Steve Torpey, who was a fellow striker, first year professional, and I was a direct competitor to him. Phil Babb, Darren Tracy, you know, Alan Dowson, the younger pro, Sean Sparham, you know, Nicky Coleman. There's some good guys there that really welcomed me. And I trained with the reserves basically initially, and then worked my way towards the first team.
Excellent. So you said Bob Pearson signed you initially, and of course Bob Pearson, the late Bob Pearson, sadly passed away, and he signed some real big players over the years at Millwall. You know, a real kind of a legend in what he did for our club. What was the big factor? I mean, at the time, I guess joining Millwall for you from Bromley, it was a big move. But was there anything in particular in what Bob said, or how you come across? You mentioned about the promise he made you to sort of, you know, be play football by Christmas. But was there any other elements to that made you feel, and your dad for that matter, that this is the move for you? Because I'm sure there'd be other clubs there looking for you as well, weren't there?
Well, yeah. Listen, as a kid growing up, all I dream about is being a professional footballer. You know, visualize scoring goals, getting that opportunity, and I'm seeing mates do it, and and then, you know, it is a breakthrough. It's one of them moments where you go, okay, now this is really happening now. And I did like this. I wasn't going to be disrespectful in any way around, you know, maybe, I don't know, Arsenal going to sign me. Maybe, you know, you go where the opportunity is. And but Bob was just really calm. And like he said, John, you've got nothing to lose. It's a year's contract. You know, you can go back. I was at Polytechnic, South Bank Polytechnic. He said, you can always go back there in a year's time. So just suspend your studies. If it doesn't work out. So, but I guess what was probably the good thing was George had a good relationship with Bob and the club, because George was a South Londoner himself. So George, obviously trying to recruit for Bromley, he's trying to build that relationship. So he like George had, even when I played reserve games for Millwall, he'd come along and watch the games and almost give me some guidance still. And Bob, you always used to call himself Uncle Bob, and he'd pull you to one side and have a chat about how you're getting on and the underlying politics of any football club, you know. And on top of that, you know, you've got to be a pretty tough cookie to play professional football. You've got to be very independent, and so you got to learn quick and smell the room quick, and you either adapt or you don't survive.
Excellent. But obviously, like you say, he made that transition a fairly kind of easy one. It kind of simplified it almost for you, didn't it? So you had low expectations, really. It's about just sort of going in there and learning and just developing as a youngster. You mentioned there that Bruce Rioch was obviously your first manager. Did he have much of a say in your signing at the time? Because I'm guessing that was in the transition period between, you know, John Doxey getting sacked and then, of course, Bruce Rioch being hired.
Well, Bruce was the manager, but the first team and the senior squad were in Ireland. So that's why in that game, we played a Millwall 11, the guys that had been left behind, so a younger group. I hadn't met Bruce, I don't think, even when I signed my professional contract. Oh, no, I think we delayed signing the professional contract until my mum was away. So she came back. The first team were away. So it took a bit of time to actually sit down with Bruce and, sign the contract and whatever else. And I was a bit, you just, because he's a manager anyway, and you're aware of him as a fantastic ex-footballer, brilliant job as a manager at Middlesbrough. He had Ian McDill as his assistant. And there's some, I think Alan Baxford was there. There was some real good people there that were welcoming, but at some stage they're going to say, "Come on in, John. What can you offer? What can you? How are you going to make us better?" And
of course, then you had Steve Harrison, didn't you, as a coach as well? I mean, what's Steve like?
Yeah, just wonderful man. Really funny, like ridiculously self-deprecating. He would just do so many silly things that actually, when you explain it, it sounds pathetic. He'd walk up, you'd have his worm wriggling around in his mouth, and he'd say, "No, John, what I think you've got to do, you've got to bend your runt," and his worm's coming out of it. Steve, but what he was very caring. So he would take me out before training to try and polish up the rawness of my game. So he'd be running down the left wing, crossing it in. I'd be trying to finish just into an empty net. Then he'd run back, get another ball, and do it again. And this was before even training started. So we had half an hour.
Just one-to-one stuff.
One-on-one. He would give me a stern word sometimes if I didn't believe in maybe where my opportunities were going to lie. And he very much was the softer side to Bruce's edge. Bruce would join in training sometimes. If he had the wow, he would just go after players, and really, let them know that, he was going to, take them out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, you hear players of the past sort of talk about Bruce Rioch and his management style, and he was very kind of disciplined. And I mean, do you feel that kind of benefits a player, or does in some ways it kind of makes you sharp, it makes you honest? You've got to perform, you've got to be on time and do all these things and make sure you're clean shaven, whatever. But how part of that do you feel is needed in the game as a youngster at the time? Do you feel that was something you needed in order to kind of give you the right sort of path, or do you feel it was a bit too much?
No, I found it tough, but I remember we went down to Devon towards the end of the first season. We knew we was in the playoffs, and we went for a little break. And I think I lost a bit of form, and I wasn't sure whether it was my fitness or what, But I was going to play in the first playoff game against Brighton, and again, Bruce took me a couple of evenings because we was down there, residential, and did some extra conditioning work with me, and he was talking to me as a father to son almost, Now, right. But he was. I saw sides to him where he could be quite aggressive on the training field or in the dressing room, but he was obviously maybe under pressure as well, and so it wasn't a style that I maybe was used to. But maybe he felt that was what was needed to knock the team into shape. And fundamentally, it was a very good season they had. To finish, I think we finished third. Just at the wrong game at the wrong time, Brighton away in the playoffs.
Of course, we'll come on to that in a sec. Sorry, Mark, go on.
Oh, I just want to say just about that Brighton game, because I do remember that game and being at that away end at home for that game. And I remember we went 1-0 up in that game and thinking myself again, and then we just kind of imploded and lost 4-1 that match, and then obviously the second game we played at home, and I know that you started that game as well. We unfortunately lost that one 2-1 also, but do you remember much about those two games and what happened with the team and because I think we were kind of favourites to win that over the two games.
I think we'd beaten Brighton at home, definitely. We might have beaten them away in the league. So we would. I think I remember we went 1-0 up. We had a free kick. I scored a goal from a header from a free kick, and it was disallowed for a foul, which would have made it 2-0. And it wasn't a foul, but it never got given. But the atmosphere was like a carnival, right?
Yeah.
And it just became a really scrappy, open game, and it suited. They had Big Mike Small up top. They had Robert Codner running from midfield, and they just seemed to gain legs and get galvanised. And suddenly, every time there was going through, Smalley was flicking it on, and someone was running onto a knockdown, and they're in on goal. And I guess we was a team over 46 games that would win more than we would lose, and had a certain style, but both times probably I played in the playoffs, we wasn't suited to the playoff format. We were suited to 46 games league format, where more often than not we would win. So it was the cup finals didn't work out in our favour.
Going back to the start again at Millwall, John. Obviously you signed. It took a little bit of time before you got your debut. Your debut did come, and true to Bob Pearson's promise, it was on Boxing Day, so a day after Christmas, but you could argue it's Christmas anyway. And it was a game, I believe, against Leicester. You come on as a substitute. Yeah. How did that feel as a young man, sort of coming out, playing for Millwall against Leicester, big club, making that appearance? We actually won that game instead. I think we might have won 2-0. I think that game. Yeah,
it was really surreal. I'd been on the bench quite early in September, October. Me and Kenny Cunningham sat on the bench. We didn't get on. I don't know whether Bruce did it just to introduce us to the first team squad and how things operated. And it was only 2 or 3 games, home and away, and then we went back to the reserves. And it was a Christmas period, so I don't know what Bruce must have been planning a change or whatever, But anyway, he said to us, right, you're going to be travelling over. You're going to stay overnight with the first team on Christmas Day. Stayed at the Royal Lancaster. Wow. I shared a room with Mick McCarthy. And then we drove back to the stadium for the game on Boxing Day, and I was on the bench. And Bruce would always come in an hour before kickoff, and the team sheet would go up and the subs. He wouldn't really do a team talk. That would be it, and you'd scan down and you see bloody on the bench, great. And I didn't expect to get on because I hadn't done previously, but maybe the game was a comfortable one and came on, and it was just everything becomes alive. Your whole senses, the noise of the crowd running around. You hear yourself breathing. You're trying to process what's going on in the game, and it was so quick. And before I knew it was over, I think I only got 15, 20 minutes, and then we had another game. I think came on at half time. I think, and then I think I don't know. There was a game. Must have been the game between that and Port Vale.
It was, and Port Vale was on New Year's Day, wasn't it? Yeah. So it was a game we won against Port Vale 2-0. Goal scorers that day was a Mr. Teddy Sheringham and a Mr. Jon Goodman. But Jon Goodman also got an assist for Teddy Sheringham, I believe. And if you wait just there, we've actually got some footage here. So please apologise for the audio of some of these recordings. But I'm going to play this now. Now, guys, if you're listening on a podcast, unfortunately, not be able to watch this, but you can listen to the audio. And guys, if you are on YouTube, you're able to watch this. So
up at Vale Park in the Potteries. Port Vale, a lively side on their own ground in particular this season, and causing problems from the start. Jon Goodman, though, a highly promising game for Millwall, setting up a goal for Teddy Sheringham. And Goodman himself in for a super second. The visiting supporters damp but happy, despite a few alarms at Brian Horn's end. A good way to start the new year. Victory at Vale Park.
How amazing is that? So, John, looking back at your first goal for Millwall, sorry, I mean, the composure to take that goal. Was that on your left foot as well? I think you sort of dinked it past the keeper. I mean, do you remember that? I mean, how much is that in your memory? So, do you actually remember that moment? I mean, we're going back.
Yeah. Like you can take yourself right back there. I had an issue as a striker because all my life, growing up, I was a midfielder. And only when I went to Leighton Wingate, non-league football, they stuck me up front because I was pretty quick. So I wasn't a natural finisher or natural goal scorer. So, and again, that's why Steve Harrison spent a lot of time working with me. And what you see with that goal there is actually it worked in my favour because I was quick enough. The goalie's coming out, but he has to spread himself. So you knew if you could lift it, as long as you make good contact, you can lift it over and score. So it happens in a fraction of a moment. But it was just the perfect way to make your debut. And I wouldn't say I was brilliant with my left foot, but even when I was dribbling, I would quite comfortably use left, right, whatever, just to keep the ball ticking. So I had a bit of confidence with my left foot, and I scored a couple of decent goals with it as well.
Fantastic, brilliant. And of course, that season, as we
amazing about that. What's amazing about that?
Sorry, Mark, you got a bit of a bad feed there. Can you hear me? Okay. That season, we finished 5th in the in Division 2, which was the second tier at the time. And unfortunately, we didn't quite get the results we needed against playoff contenders Brighton at the time. That season in particular, obviously, we mentioned about Teddy Sheringham. He was scoring goals for fun, wasn't he? And I think he scored 38 goals that season.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, how did it feel? For you as a youngster playing alongside Teddy Sheringham. I mean, surely you must have learned quite a lot from him. I mean, what's the main things you kind of picked up on? What did you? Do you think you kind of changed your game anyway whilst you were playing with him?
I was very lucky. Like Paul Goddard, Malcolm Allen, and Teddy, they're 3 really technically strong strikers. Now, my strength was not technical ability. My strength was my running and my energy. But of course, I wanted to improve my technical ability. So sometimes, we'd do some finishing and I'd partner with Teddy or partner with Malcolm. And just Teddy's heading of the ball was like how he positioned his body. He could jump, he could spring really well, and he could hang in the air and he could guide headers. And so, you're just trying to copy his movement, his body positioning, albeit it's not something you can learn overnight. So what I had to try to do was maintain my strengths and then tackle the weaknesses along the way. So, and even during games, like I remember we played Brighton at home. I think it was Brighton at home, and I had a chance, and I side-footed it, and Ted went mad at me. He said, "What? We use this bit stronger legs. Just smash it, right?" So then I got another chance. I smashed it, and it went under the goal and went in. And he's like, "I told you that." So he was 25, 26 in the peak of his career. I was 19 at the start, and I was able to just ride his quality. So I could, he hid a lot of my weaknesses. I remember Ted thought I think he went 2 games without scoring. We went down to Bristol City away. And it was an important game, and Ted was having a bit of a confidence crisis because he hadn't scored for 2 games. And remember one was walking out. And he scored 4 that game. But he scored headers, free kicks, penalties, open play. Brilliant. Yeah.
So did he just sort of talk to you during the games? What sort of things did he kind of coach you as a kind of more senior player, I guess? Do you remember those kind of conversations?
He would just try and steer me. Yeah, listen, Teddy was very much about his own game, but he also knew, I think, that if I was on my game, it helped his game. Yeah. So it could be. You would stretch the defence, wouldn't you? With your pace, you'll be on space to hopefully create some disruption for him to find space to score goals. And I helped a few assists with Teddy, like you saw even against Port Vale. I knew if I put the ball into certain areas, more than likely he'll be there and score. So no, he was it wasn't ongoing commentary, but there'd be moments. Come on now, get your breath. Come on now, stand here. Don't do that. Really? Shoot, whatever it may. And it was just a real good senior professional, playing and managing someone else's game as well.
Yeah, excellent. So, of course, he then leaves. Naturally, next season, you've got to find someone who's going to replace the 38 goals that he scored the season before, which couldn't have been easy. And subsequently, it was a tough season. I mean, obviously, we finished lower in division that time. I think we finished at 15th at the time. And I guess it was part of a rebuilding program again for the following season. Obviously, you've been more at the forefront of it this time. You're no longer the youngster, sort of, you're coming off and being an impact player. You're getting more starts, more games, and dare I say, kind of, they were a lot more reliant on you as well. But there were some great players at the time. So I'm talking about the sort of 92, 93 season. You look at the likes of, Jamie Morley coming in, for example. You had Malcolm Mann, etc., still there, and Alex Ray. But you were obviously more in the frame there as a forward. How do you felt it went, that season for you, being looked upon more sort of senior sort of player, I guess, or someone who's more sort of first team regular?
Yeah, we finished the season. Teddy had been sold. Bruce Rioch rung me up, and I'd just come back from holiday. Said, "Come in to see me in the office." Went to see Bruce. He said, "It's an important season for you now. You're going to be an important player for us. So you just make sure you're right. Have a good pre-season," which I thought, was quite a good sign, but also a hell of a responsibility. I wasn't Teddy. So anyway, we started pre-season. We were, I was in and around the team, but I just wasn't. I didn't have Teddy as my partner. We'd signed John Colquhoun, we signed Mark Falco, we signed, I think, John McGinley as well. So I was in and around it, but I think Bruce was unsure what his best two was going to be. Probably Colquhoun and Falco, I think, might have started the season. John McGinley might, I can't remember. He really liked John McGinley. And then we went to Wrexham, played a pre-season friend. He played against Chris Armstrong. Chris was phenomenal. He tore us apart. So he signs Chris as well, who's very quick and very direct, similar to myself. So suddenly, and you still got Malcolm Mann on there. So suddenly we've got 5 or 6 strikers, and I fell away during that second season. I ended up not even making it onto the bench for the reserve sometimes. So it was a very steep drop, fall, but I needed that dip to kind of relearn and become a more reliable player. And Mick McCarthy was good in them moments of, he used to call me the invisible man or the forgotten man. He said, where's Goody? He's like Christmas do. He bought me a book, The Invisible Man, because I wasn't even training with the first team. And I probably had earned some trust amongst them guys where I'd had a good first season. So it's ultimately, remember, we were Portsmouth away and we got beat heavy. And I think there was a banners saying Bruce out, and he got the sack and Mick took over, and we was in a little bit of a wobbly spell, but Mick steadied the ship and we ended up finishing the season okay. And then Mick, obviously, next thing he sold Chris Armstrong. Jamie Morley comes in as Jamie Makeway, as he used to call him. And again, Jamie probably taught me a little bit as well about, he was a proper street lad, Jamie, like South London boy, larger than life, full of confidence. And I thought, listen, an arrogance, whatever. I thought, I'm better than you, but he was doing well. He was scoring goals. Well, I've just got to simplify my game. I've just got to go and score some goals. And me and Jamie ended up hitting it off up front together, and we had quite a good season.
So in that transition again, when Mick McCarthy takes over, thinking back, we're talking 20 odd, 30 odd years ago now. Sorry, I remember back then the change of style in the way we were playing. We've seen it play a little bit more fluidity. We weren't so sort of rigid, we weren't so structured under Mick McCarthy. And I don't know what happened. Maybe you could explain what you felt was the difference when Mick McCarthy took over, because it seems to be a lot more, I guess, I'm not saying you weren't disciplined, but you were allowed to kind of express yourselves a bit more. It was more free-flowing football. I remember there's loads of goals being scored all the time, and we were always playing on the front foot. What was the changes then, do you find, at the time?
Yeah, it ended up being quite a young side, and I think Glenn Hotwell must have been the manager at Swindon, and they was the only team really in the country that was playing a different shape to a traditional 4-4-2. So we played this diamond midfield shape. So it was normal back four, a diamond shape that would cause the opposition problems because there was no obvious wide person, but we seemed to have lots of players in the middle of the pitch. And if you had speed up top, you could stretch the pitch. So suddenly we could make the pitch quite a big area. Some very talented midfielders like Andy May came in. Alex Ray obviously was very good. Phil Barber had legs. Ian Bogey was a very good technician, as well as Malcolm Allen playing just behind the front two or up front, and how it was panning out. And then myself, Chris Armstrong, and myself and McGinley, or Morley and McGinley. I up top. So, you know, we can't. And then what you had on the width was Kenny Cullen was a very up and down fit boy. So he offered the width from the fullback, and Ben Thatcher on the left hand side. So yeah, we had a real. If you wanted to make it a physical game, as in big pitch, and you know we'll outrace you, outwork you, sort of thing, we could do that. And that then we just seemed to stretch teams and score lots of goals. You know, we just
interesting to say that, John. I mean, I'll pick it up. I've got some footage here to show you again. So apologies if the audio is too loud on this one, but if it is, you might want to lower the volume down, listeners. But here's a game, Millwall against Watford, October 1993, where John scores a hat-trick and a young Andy Roberts is in the mix for the goal scorer. So have a look at this.
After 7.5 hours of football without a single goal, Millwall ended their drought in style in October. The Lions began the month with a superb run of 3 successive victories, starting with a 2-part drama against Watford.
Barber with a header. Comes to Morley with a chance. Good save by Shepherd. Roberts tries to hook it back. There's Goodman. Jon Goodman makes it 1-0 to Millwall. Jon Goodman in his first full game of the season gives the Lions the lead. There's Barber with the header. Ball breaks nicely, sits up for Morley. Good save by Simon Shepherd, but he can only parry it to Roberts. Roberts only gets half of it, but Jon Goodman is on hand. Keller. Long ball downfield. Oh, that's a mistake by Dublin. There's Goodman for his second. Jon Goodman makes it 2 for Millwall. Millwall 2, Watford 0. It's Keller with the long ball downfield. Now this is a real hash of it there by Keith Dublin, and it takes no second bidding for Jon Goodman to lash the ball in left-footed. Shepherd then clears long downfield as Watford striving to get back into this game, but it's Millwall in possession once more. Goodman with the touch. Here's Pavir making great strides towards the goal. Pavir, can he go all the way? No, it's a penalty, is it? Referee is consulting with his linesman, is he? It's a free kick just outside the box. That one was close. Let's look at it again. Pavir, look at the pace he's got there. 3 defenders around him, but none of them can get near him. Tackle comes in, and that was close to being a penalty. Free kick then to Millwall, right on the edge of the box. Phil Barber is over it. Andy Roberts is there too. Barber with a shot into the wall. Roberts! Andy Roberts with his first goal of the season makes it Millwall 3, Watford 0. Superb strike from Andy Roberts. Here's the free kick from Barber. Comes back out of the wall, and Roberts, right-footed from the edge of the box, makes it 3-0 to the Lions. Mark Beard then will take the throw. Finds Richard Huxford. Huxford turns well. Huxford through ball, finds Jon Goodman in space now. Goodman with a chance for his hat-trick, and he's scored it. Jon Goodman, returning to the side after injury, has scored his hat-trick. It's Millwall 4, Watford 0. Here's Huxford, and what a lovely ball that is. Goodman invited to get onto it, round Simon Shepherd, and there it is, side-footed into the empty net. Shepherd then will clear long downfield. Watford surely now, with just 9 minutes remaining, can only be looking for a consolation. And here's Lee Nogan, perhaps with a chance to get one for them, and he has. Lee Nogan scores for Watford. It's Millwall 4, Watford 1.
There you go. I mean, what an amazing game that would have been there to play. I mean, getting a hat-trick. And I noticed there, that was on the new Den as well. I mean, yeah, you're probably one of the very few players that had the privilege of playing at the old Den and the new Den. So, what was that like? How would you compare the 2 stadiums?
Yeah, the old Den was atmospheric. You know, it really was, and we had some real good times. I was very lucky this season. Like not enormous gates. I remember playing one that was a sellout, Arsenal in the League Cup in the second leg. We had them at our place, and it was brilliant night. You know, and it would lift you just, you know, because everywhere you was, you could hear everything that's being said, good or bad. And then we knew we was going to the new Den. I was desperate to be ready to play the first games at the new Den, but had a groin problem. So I was having surgery. I think the first stadium match was Rio Sociedad or something like that, and I was in hospital at the time. And So as it said there, it took me a little while to get into the team. I didn't expect to start. I think that day, I think John Kerr had started up front. John Kerr coming from the States, and so I didn't have the traditional pre-match. I had a bacon roll and a cup of tea, and drove in really relaxed. And then Mick peeled me off and said, "Oh, you're going to start today," which was great. And luckily enough, I scored very early on in the game, and managed to get the 3. So brilliant.
And of course, E.T. Edson Vivia. You see him sort of making that run through the middle there. I mean, incidentally, I can't remember, was that a sending off? I mean, that player brought him down right at the edge of the box there, last man.
I was thinking the same there. I don't know if he must have got booked. I can't remember. It possibly there was enough bodies around it to argue not. But it was. I mean, a rash challenge. I think it was Dean Olsworth's brother, that David Olsworth, and his head must have fallen off because it was free falling. That was chasing me and Morley all day, and probably got the ump of it all.
Don't blame exactly. But no, it's a great performance, and again, just getting the hat trick as well must have been lovely. For any striker could get a hat trick, I think is a lovely moment. So. And luckily for you, obviously, you've done that, throughout your career a few times. There's also another game I want to sort of talk about, which is a game that was in October '93. Sorry, so over in January '94, we then play against Crystal Palace at home.
New Year's Day. New Year's Day.
Yeah, and this is a game where again you're on a score sheet. I believe E.T. scores and also Alex Ray as well. So. I'm going to just try and find that for you now. Just bear with one second.
Palace were cut down to size when they felt the full force of Millwall's power on New Year's Day.
And now maybe Millwall can launch something. Alex Ray took it for one for Goodman. They're chasing Goodman. It's through. Jon Goodman, 1-on-1. Brilliant save. Martin turning around the corner. I can tell you this is onside. Ray is onside. He's got the ball through to Verveer. Can he turn? Brilliant. Just needs that cross and he's managed it. It's going to be in there. It is. It's Goodman. 50 minutes gone. It was a brilliant piece of skill from Etienne Verveer. Millwall have broken the deadlock. And the ball came down the right. Ray did superbly, found Verveer. Kept his head. He knew there was a chance, steadied. Got in onto the left, then got it back onto the right again. And look at the precision of this cross. Martin has no chance. And Goodman gets up and heads, and Martin has no chance. It's Millwall 1, Crystal Palace 0. And the Lions are ahead, and now the atmosphere in the stadium is electric. Another Millwall corner, and Palace are up against it now. Up goes Stevens. Verveer hits the crossbar. Is it in? It is. It is. And I think Verveer will claim that one for himself. Brilliant piece of skill from the Millwall number 8. And Millwall are 2 up. The corner came in. It was the corner that did all the damage. Put Palace immediately under pressure. The header came forward. In the end, it was the number 8 who did it, and that overhead from Verveer, it went in, and trying to clear it off the line was Barry, but it was already over. That was Etienne Verveer, and it's Millwall 2, Crystal Palace 0. The league leaders being beaten. Alex Ray, Goodman, scorer of the first goal. Can Mitchell turn? He was pushed out. It's a penalty. It's a penalty, and Millwall got the chance to go 3 ahead. Mitchell's turn, just completely flat-footed Young. You'll see this ball come in again. There it was. He completely turned his man. He was floored. And there's no doubt that it was a penalty. Absolutely no doubt at all. Alex Ray, of course, will take the penalty kick and the chance to make it 3-0. Which he does. Alex Ray has done. It's a fantastic time for Millwall. And not a very good time for the league leaders. He took it very quickly. And it's Riotsville here at the Den. Marvellous stuff.
Unbelievable, brilliant. What was interesting, I picked up on your header there. That was very Teddy-like, wasn't it? And you mentioned there about studying Teddy and learning from him. I mean, that leap from a standing jump was awesome, wasn't it? From across from
it was brilliant skill from ET, to be fair. And what you learn over the years is if you just stand in and around the right areas, then the ball will come to you, rather than when I started out, you're trying to make things happen, with good players around you. Yeah, so it was it wasn't a great header, but I was in the right place, and probably I thought that the head into Dave Mitchell for and he's rolled Eric Young really well there to win the penalty. So yeah, definitely heading was improving and my all round game. But I think on that day Chris Armstrong was playing for Crystal Palace as well, so Chris had obviously moved on. So yeah, it was a really nice game for us. Me and Chris were good friends when we was at Millwall together, and we'd often talk about what may lie in the future. So yeah, to see him, thankfully we got one over him that day.
Brilliant, excellent. And you mentioned there as well, Dave Mitchell. Big Dave Mitchell. I mean, what's he like to play with? He's someone who, again, I guess you could argue, you could say he was also a crowd favourite at the Den. Mill fans seem to like his energy and his attitude.
All action. Clever player. Like as you saw with that penalty, he used his body really well. Was very quick off the mark. Wasn't prolific as a goal scorer, but would contribute with goals. And a great guy. I remember him at Swindon. He played against us, and he played in that diamond formation as a Swindon player, and it was really difficult to play against. So, when we signed him, we knew we got a good one.
Brilliant, excellent. And you mentioned there Eric Young as well. Was he marking you that day, Eric Young, or was he marking Dave?
Actually, looking at I see Richard Shaw, Eric Young, and I feel like Chris Coleman as well in there, and I think Nigel Martin in goal. I mean, I remember. In the first half, you showed it there. I had a chance on through, and it's on my weaker, on my left side. I've ended up coming back onto my right, and it was a good save from Nigel Martin. But probably, Mick that week he pulled me and he said, "You should have struck at your left foot." So again, there's always, within the games, there's always learning.
Yeah, exactly. So the season before that one, we narrowly missed out on a playoff place. We finished 7th in the league, but that season in particular. Was a pretty sort of decent season for us. We made it into the playoffs again, the 93-94 season, and we lost in the playoffs against Derby. So that was 2-0 away, and I believe did we lose 3-1 at home or the way around? I can't remember how it worked now, but
it was 2-0 away, and I'd had a few injury issues, but I missed a couple of games, got myself fit for the Derby away game, and I think we fancied ourselves again. I think we had a good record against Derby, but it's a peculiar thing. Whether it's right or it's wrong, if you finish third and you're playing 6, you go away first. So I don't know whether, in hindsight, you're better off being at home first and hopefully building a scoreline you can defend.
Get the win, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. That's true. Actually,
it happened twice for us where we went away first and. The second game was already away from us, but we was poor on the day. They had some good players, Derby, no doubt about that. Gabbiadini, I think, was a striker. Possibly Paul Kitson as well. So they had, again, for a cup final, they probably had the better jokers in the pack. Possibly, I didn't play in the game at the Den. I think we had a goal up in that, but they always carried a real big goal threat with. With particularly Gabbiadini, terrorising our defence. So and then it all just got really messy, and not one to remember too much.
During that sort of 93-94 sort of period, you touched on about Ben Thatcher breaking into the team. Obviously, we mentioned Andy Roberts. There was also Mark Kennedy, who was breaking through at the time. And these are really good youngsters, good talented youngsters coming through. I mean, you weren't too much older than them yourselves, but you were also looked up as a senior member of the team. So what about these 3 lads coming through? What did they have coming through the Millwall youth system that you felt that made them so good and go on to even bigger and better things?
Yeah, well, when Bruce Rupp became manager, he made some really good appointments from a staff perspective. Obviously, Ian Evans came in, also Steve Harrison, who was the England coach at the time. Ian Evans came from Palace, and Ian was a very good coach for the reserves, ended up assisting Mick when Mick got the job. And Tom Wally came in to take the youth team, and Tom had been at Watford, I think. And Tom, fiery Welshman, tough man, and he would place a lot of demands physically on the players. And with Tom, you'd always the younger pros, myself, Chris Armstrong, Kenny Cohen, we'd come back a couple of weeks early before pre-season was about to start and work with Tom for a week or 2 weeks because he'd knock you into shape. So when the pros were back, he was already ahead of the game. So I think definitely Millwall throughout its entirety and still now, you've got to have an edge to you. You know, you've got to have a bit of toughness that Tom would instill into you, and, you know, the fans would expect of you. And, you know, Thatch, Andy, Mark Kennedy, but people like Tony Dolby, who's, you know, I think lived on the Old Kent Road, and, you know, other young lads as well that were in and around it. So it was funny. We'd play old versus young, and probably the youngest Oldham would be about 22, 23. You know, it was a very young squad. And then I think Mick would occasionally, you know, we had Pat Vandenhout, Terry Hurlock. Keith Stevens was probably still around at that stage, Rhino. You know, he mixed up with, say, Dave Mitchell as well. So there was some experience in amongst it. Andy May again, and Malcolm was still. I think Malcolm might have gone to Newcastle, and I can't remember. But yeah, it was a good blend. But of course, there was I guess the other side of the coin was the better younger players were always going to get picked off by other clubs as well.
Yeah, you touched on about Ryder there, Keith Stevens. I guess, was he your captain during that period of most of that time when you were there? I mean, what was he like as a person, as a player, as a leader? How would you describe him?
Unique. When I was at Bromley, and, you know, they said, you know, I'm going to go maybe sign for Millwall. They said, John, you just got to run around and kick people like Rhino. They love Rhino. He just boots everyone, right? I was like, okay. And then you meet Keith or Rhino, and a really caring guy, really supportive, very much about team, and would take us out Tuesday nights, or Tuesday afternoons after training. It would end up being Tuesday nights and Saturday nights after games. He'd always want to have some fun, you know, but when you train properly. I remember we was in the playoffs. I think it was the first year, rightly or wrongly, he'd booked a holiday. So Bruce had given us a bit of time off before the Brighton game, and Rhino landed that morning. I think he was still drunk. Turned up at training, and we're doing all these shuttle runs. And after every shuttle run, Rhino was throwing up on the side of the pitch. You know, it's just, but he, you know, listen, it wasn't the most professional, you could argue, but what we would go the whole way for each other. You know, he created a real good spirit, and he used to tackle with his forearm, Rhino. So the referee looking at the ball, he'd smash someone in the face, you know, and get away with it. And then he'd come over and hold his head, and, you know, he just had such a clever way of meeting people.
What was it like in training with you? I mean, I'm sure you must have had games where you're up against him in training. Was he as physical in training as he was in matches, or did he kind of give you a bit of a breather?
He'd say to me, John, don't run around too much in training. Do you know what I mean? He didn't really. Mick would boot me. Mick would, again.
You didn't care.
If he was losing, and then say us young'uns, we're a bit disrespectful. We start taking the piss and olaying it, whatever else. Suddenly, he's fucking pulled down the back of my calf and the Achilles, and he's smashing it.
Oh God!
But it kept you sharp, you know. So you know, it was just it was. There was some good guys there. Yeah, it really was.
Brilliant. There's a game that I want to play to you, which is back in January '93. So it was Millwall against Brentford.
Okay. The old end.
The old end. And there was a certain Mr. Morley who, I don't know if you remember, he nicked the goal, didn't he? Yeah. Now we'll watch it in a second. And I want to ask you afterwards. You know, do you think that ball would have gone in had Morley not tapped it in at the end?
I'll have to watch it back. At the time, because I scored 2, I wasn't that bothered, you know. But yeah. Listen, I would have done the same.
Let's take a look and let the listeners and the fans watching this make their decision on it. So this is Millwall against Brentford. January '93, and here we go.
What a strike. He seemed to take it so casually. He came inside and everybody backed off and suddenly let it go on his left foot. I didn't really think he was going to hit it myself. Wonderful goal. Wonderful strike. What a start.
Barber to Dawes. Certainly nobody picked him up, but Hooper has made it two.
I'll keep quiet. Well, that's certainly cleared your point, Brian. They are going for goals. That's a great goal. Absolutely great cross, great header, super goal. So Theo, keep quiet.
24 minutes gone, here we go. It was a great run by Ian Dawes. He did so well linking up with Barber. And a powered header in there, 24 minutes. Millwall 2-0 up. Barber. Ray's on his way again. He might outpace the ball. Alex Ray again. Goodman is three.
That's a splendid goal, Brian.
The crowd are on their feet in the main stand on the other side there. A super goal for Millwall. Their third of this first half and still 4 minutes of it left. Knocked forward there by Barber. Ray, who's been an absolute inspiration to them through the midfield, takes on Jamie Bates, beats him for pace, slides the ball inch perfect there for Jon Goodman, and it's a tap in for number 3. Strong challenge. Ian Bogey takes it up for Millwall. By Andy Roberts. Goodman with a chance. Saved miraculously on the line there by Marcus Gale. Krasinski, we think, has gone here. Betsy Krasinski is the one who's gone off. Goodman's shot saved there. There goes Goodman, and he is really quick. Has he got the better of Statham? He has! Will it cross the line, or will Morley finish it off? It's 4.
He's actually made up about 4 yards there, Brian. You know, as he was running, he said he's quick. He did actually make up about 4 yards and stayed them. I don't believe it, because he's no slouch. He did very well.
I think it may have crossed the line, but Morley made absolutely sure. So, and it was Jamie Morley who actually put it over the line. But here's the man who was in the final of the Rumbelow sprint at Wembley, Jon Goodman, just flicking it wide. I think it would have had enough purchase just to have got there, but Morley made absolutely sure. And Millwall are 4-0 to the good. They've equalled their best ever victory against Brentford.
I'd have scored that one, Brian. I'd have been happy to score that, mate.
Brentford's free kick. Marcus Gale. This is Paul Buckle. Chipped in there, just over the head of Chalmers. Bennett, and now Bissett! And Brentford have got back. I won't say they've got back into the game, but they've got themselves a goal with, of course, none other than Gary Bissett. Forward for Goodman. Played nicely into the path that time for Ray. Perfectly into the path of Roberts now. And Morley against the post. Knocked away. Turned in once more. Goodman jumps into that one. Off the post again. And behind by Morley. What an amazing sequence. This was it again. Great run by Andy Roberts. Such a powerful young man. Morley hitting it against the post. This is it now from behind the goal. It's dinked in again here. You're not missing anything on the field at the moment, let me tell you. Goodman's header again cleared off the line, and Morley just puts it wide. Now here comes Millwall again. Morley! 5-1.
You see, there isn't any real pace there at the back. Jamie Bates has found that the pace of Goodman and the runs of the other players far too much to take. And he's been the main culprit, unfortunately.
Goodman battling for the ball, wins the ball. Morley takes it up. Past Benstead, and that's number 5. Morley, here's Ray again. It's a lovely ball played into the path of Allen. Some good stuff here again now. Barber was in 2 minds actually as to what to do there, but it's picked up again by Jon Goodman. Goodman again. There's a shot. Extraordinary goal. Jon Goodman second and Millwall 6th. was happening to the goalkeeper.
That's a real striker's goal, Brian. I think Graham Mansell thought he was going wide. He was anticipating the one to the left, and he was left stranded, as you rightly can see there.
Brilliant game. Again, I mean, I have to ask a question. Do you remember those sort of games? Do you remember those moments?
Yeah, we had a lovely spell of. Firstly, it was a great time from a television perspective. I think because there was an issue with the Premier League Division 1, whatever. I think it must have gone to Premier League then. So we was on the big match of the day, big match on a Sunday quite regularly. And it seemed to bring out the best in us. We would score a lot of goals. Remember that day, and it's funny because Gary Blissett scored for Brentford, and Marcus Gow was mentioned. Both became Wimbledon players, so we ended up at Wimbledon together. Right. So he's hammering him about that day. I'm quite, but it was, as you said. I mean, Alex Ray was just outstanding that day. You know,
was he playing right back that day? John, was he playing right back? That's number 2 shirt on.
I think Andy Roberts might have been right back, and Alex might have been right side of the diamond. He might have been playing in midfield, but breaking from midfield. You know, he just he had a real strong forward runner, Alex, with the ball, and could shoot off either foot.
Excellent. And also, I mean, what I noticed there was the relationship there. I mean, with you and Jamie Morley. I mean, I'm sure you got on well with all your striking partners, but you could just sort of see there in their goal celebrations. The fact he was kissing your forehead and hugging you, and you're congratulating him on his goals and vice versa. I mean, did you feel you had that kind of good relationship with Jamie, both on and off the field? Yeah,
we would go out occasionally. He'd take me to various parts of South London to see the nightlife. But he kind of was really in the moment. Jamie, he was he'd come from Crystal Palace, which is difficult for anybody coming from Palace into Millwall, and he just hit the ground running. And there was a real healthy competition amongst us as well. I wanted to score more goals than him. No doubt he wanted to score more goals than me. But more importantly, we wanted to be successful. We was ambitious young men, and then you've got, like you say, Andy Roberts, who might have been 18 or 19 in the side, and people like Mark Beard would come in and out as well. So, it was a very young, I guess, together group, really was together.
And very hungry as well, with that youth and that kind of young mentality. Everyone wants to develop. Everyone wants to prove themselves, don't they? They all want want more, want to achieve more, I guess.
Yeah, and the fans would, not the fans were in a demanding way. There was an expectation, that we were. They'd been in the first division. There was still, a legacy of that, and we sweat some very good players. So the expectation that we should be competitive, and we did. We had a real good few seasons there.
Yeah. Also, I couldn't help but notice that the shirt you were wearing at the time, that was the old Fairview kit, which I quite liked at the time. During your time at Millwall, was there ever a favourite kit that you liked? Obviously, you had the Lewisham Council one, the Fairview, the Captain Morgan. What was one that you?
Probably like Captain Morgan for some reason. I don't accept that was also when we'd gone to the new den. So I enjoyed playing at the old den, but also the new den was creating, I guess, a different level of expectation on us. It felt like the club was making forward steps, and the kit was a little bit tighter and a little bit, I guess, more stylish, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting point you say that, because I remember back at the time, it did feel like, I'm not saying we weren't good enough to have that stadium, but it certainly felt that, wow, this is where we want to be. This is a great intent by the club. It shows where we want to get to. And I think even now, you look back, God knows how many years it's been since that stadium's been built, and you still look at it, you still think, so you know what, this is a nice stadium. When you compare it to other stadiums, I've been to a few, over the last few years, away grounds, you get some real bad stadiums even now, and there's no improvement really made to it. We are quite fortunate to have what we have at the moment. So it's nice that, I guess, again, back to what I said earlier, the fact you played in the old den and the new den, it's quite unique. You're quite lucky to have that honour, I guess, in some ways. So that season, obviously, I'll go back in time again. So we're going forward now to 94-95 season. So this would have been the season where, I think it's your last season at Millwall, was that right? We finished 13th Yeah, we finished 13th in that one. Before we talk about your move to Wimbledon, do you remember your last game for Millwall? Do you remember who it was against?
Yeah, I think it was Swindon away.
It was, yeah. And do you remember scoring that game?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think we won 2-0.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah, I didn't like the celebration actually, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I managed to retrieve a very, very small section. Again, apologies for the video and the visual here because it's not great. We're going back 30 years, aren't we? So if I can just play this to you, it's very, very short, but you get to see your goal, which is most importantly. And also young Mark Kennedy on the score sheet as well. So here we go.
Surprisingly took all 3 points. The stalemate in the first half was broken in the second thanks to Jon Goodman. The second goal was one Fraser Digby will want to forget. He showed too much of the ball to 18-year-old Irishman Mark Kennedy, and he promptly dispatched it into Digby's goal. When Scott was tugged down in the penalty area, Swindon were given hope. Bodin converted the spot kick, but the home record had disappeared.
I love that funky music as well at the back. That's but no, what way to go out. So it's lovely to kind of end on a high with a win, and again a goal, as all good strikers do. They all enjoy scoring goals. So how did that feel? I mean, at the time, I guess was the sale agreed at that moment, or was that sort of slightly before? I mean, how did the sale come about? You joining Wimbledon? When was the first you knew about it?
I think because it's funny how your emotions go back 30 years, but they're still vivid. So I'm pretty certain it was a tinge of sadness that game, because I think I'd met an agent on the Thursday or the Friday leading into the game on the Saturday, and he said that there's a strong chance that Wimbledon were going to make a bid for me. Bizarrely, Andy May was in the car with Mick McCarthy, and Joe Kinnear had rung Mick up when I was travelling to a game or something to ask about me as well. So there's no secrets in football. So Andy was like, "Oh, goody, I think Wimbledon are going to sign you." The agent confirmed it, but nothing. Mick hadn't said anything. So it was only we played the game on the Saturday, went into training on the Monday, and still nothing had happened. So I thought, maybe it's not. And then I think the agent rang me and said, "Oh, have you heard from Mick? Has Mick said anything?" No. I said, "No, not." He said, "Well, he's going to call you later today. Rest assured, you're going to go and meet Wimbledon." And then, lo and behold, a few hours later, Mick rang me up, and he always called me Elvis. He said, "Hey, Elvis, are you sitting down? We've agreed a fee for you and Kenny to go to Wimbledon." He said, "Have you got an agent?" I was like, "Yeah." He says, he said, "Who is it?" I said, "Oh, whoever it was." He said, "Okay, no doubt he'll sort out the details." So I think we met the agent. So Kenny then rings me panicking because he don't want to move. Ken does not want to go to Wimbledon, right? And I'm more, I guess, hard-nosed about it, thinking it's Premier League football. We've had a good run at Millwall. You never know when his opportunity is going to come along. Out of choice, was it going to be Wimbledon? No. There was other clubs maybe in the Premier League, but you don't get that luxury of choice. Yeah. So I meet Kenny at Shooters Hill. We meet the agent. We drive to St John's Wood, following the agent. Go to Sam and Mam's house, and Joe Kinnear's there, the manager, and Sam and the agent, and they whisk us upstairs. And there's a game. I'm watching this game of football in Sam's house, and they're all talking downstairs about the financials. And then the agent comes up, says, "Right, we're going to go downstairs. We're going to politely decline, and we don't say anything, right?" We go downstairs, politely decline, and then Joe Kinnear's putting her face saying, "What's the fucking matter? Can't you speak for yourself?" Right? So I've been told not to say anything, And he's like, "Well, if you don't fancy it, don't come," type thing. And I was like, "Well, really? I'm just being invited by the agent." He said, "Well," and Sam was more like, "If you guys don't feel you're ready yet, then maybe we'll come and get you at a later date, But if you want to play against Aston Villa next week, then you've got to sign for us." Wow. But the money, financially, it wasn't life-changing. And although money then wasn't anywhere near the level it was now, actually for Millwall, we was paid relatively well, me and Kendo. So we didn't really want to leave. So we both agreed to stay. Then we go back into training the following day. And Mick's going mad. He's like, "What are you doing here?" We said, "Well, we've not agreed anything yet." check. He said, no. He says, you've got to go. He said, we need the money. So I was like, oh, okay. Nothing changed financially. Me and Kenny just said, oh, well, we'll go then, shall we? That kind of was it. So we, a bit naive, really. But we end up going back to Sam's house. John Fashion, who happened to be there, although Fash had left and gone to Aston Villa by this stage, we then agreed whatever we agreed, and the phone rings and it's Vinnie Jones welcoming us to the club, and I think we then went the following day and they played Aston Villa, and I think we went in the little manager's room beforehand with Joe Kinnear, and Ron Atkinson's in there and he's hammering his players and saying they're all shit, and we go and watch the game, and I think they were 3-1 up and lose 4-3 or something bonkers. It's typical Wimbledon match, and the next day Ron Atkinson gets the sack. So and then me and Kenny made our debuts against Newcastle a couple of weeks later.
Bloody hell, unbelievable! And of course, you're then fighting for a place up front against the likes of Dean Holdsworth, if Cuckoo as well, some big players there. I mean, how was that a bit daunting, or did you sort of want to embrace the challenge of getting into that side and getting to that team?
Yeah, I didn't think Wimbledon would suit me because of the style of football and very direct. And whilst I compete, I wasn't great in the air, and I was a little bit cautious or unsure about the whole thing. But like I said, you have to make it work. So when we started training, we do normal training practices, and I was thinking, these ain't very good, but as in, Robbie Earle was not technically very good as a midfielder. I'd say Alex Ray was a far better player, but Robbie could break into the box, time his run perfectly, and score a goal from a cross or a rebound or whatever. Robbie was a very good goalkeeper. He'd get 15 goals a season from midfield in the Premier League. So,
he was good in the air, weren't he, as well, from memory? He was quite agile, good in the air.
Really, really good in the air. Someone like Alan Kimball, a left back, I'd say Ben Thatcher was far better left back defensively, but Thatcher could put the ball exactly where it needed to be on a set piece, which was really important to Wimbledon. Dean Holdsworth was a fantastic finisher. He wouldn't necessarily have great movement, but he could finish off either foot with his head really well. So what you learned was that, right, I need to be really, really good at something here. And so again, Mick Harford was a fantastic striker. FM was a really strong player. Dean Holdsworth, Marcus Gale, Gary Blissett, Andy Clark. We had a lot of attacking players. So you tried to nick a bit off of them all. And I was none of them things, but some of them things, And so, I scored a few goals. And probably my first 18 months there was very good. And then, again, I picked up injuries. Probably the physical demands of that style of play impacted me. And then I kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. I was going to leave and then got injured again and packed up. So it was just really bizarre. It just didn't work in my favour, that one.
Yeah, sadly, we'll touch on your injury in a moment. But am I right in thinking you might have played a small part, you and Kenny Cunningham, in Wimbledon signing Ben Thatcher, Andy Roberts, and Mark Kennedy? Is that true?
Martin. Yeah, Sam was a really interesting owner. He'd be at the training ground quite a lot. When we signed, he took us to Selhurst Park, and then he took us from Selhurst Park to the training ground to meet the staff. And he was in his car, and he's making phone calls, introducing us to Ron Nodes over his car phone, whatever else. He was a very passionate owner. And then he'd come to the training ground sometimes and have 300 quid in, or loads of 50s in his pocket. Come on, Goody, penalty shootout, me against you, and I'll give you, for 50 quid. And then he'd do it with another one for another 50 quid. Or sometimes he'd be at the change room before the game and say, I've bet on you today, Goody. I've had 50 quid on you first goal scorer. You better not let me down. So in the days when probably whether you was or not allowed to bet, but God knows. But he was a larger than life character, and he would. So I guess he felt he'd probably done a good deal with me, done a very good deal with Kenny. Kenny. So he was like, who else is good at Millwall? Who can I go and get? And we're like, okay. Can you get Andy Roberts? What do you need? A midfielder? Get Andy. You want a striker? Sparky had gone to Liverpool, world's the most expensive teenager at the time. He ended up coming to us, and as did Thatch. So at one stage there was 5 of us there.
Wow, excellent. And I guess that was a season that Mill got relegated again to would be the second division, which was the third tier. So there's no surprise, you leave we get relegated. So yeah, cheers to that, John.
Listen, off the back of it, two very, very, very good players came in. I remember Timmy Cahill and the striker at the time. I can't remember his name. The Irish lad. Before Neil Harris,
Stephen Reid, maybe.
Well, that's it. Reedy and there was one other. I can't remember. Richard Sadler was a very
Richard Sadler,
good
of course, absolutely. Why had I forget him? Yeah,
a good young team emerged, and that sometimes happens out of necessity. You know, they went on a really good run again. So
excellent. So unfortunately, in 2000, you get injured against Chelsea. I think it was.
No, it wasn't. Sorry, it was Kenny who done me. It didn't mean to.
Really? What is this in training?
Yeah, pre-season training. So we did it was the day before we was playing Brentford in a pre-season friendly. I'd had a phone call on the way into the training saying, "Oh, Reading are going to make a bid for you." So there's a chance of going. And Reading, I think, just got into the Championship. We're training that day. It's a winning goal. I hit the winning goal. As I hit the shot, Kenny just bumps me from behind. I end up landing with a straight leg. It all wobbles and something pops. And I collapse on the ground. I think, that didn't feel too good. We go on a warm down around the field. And I kept falling over. And I think, my knees, something's gone wrong here. Went in to see the physio, and he did a few assessments. And he said, I better check it again tomorrow. You won't be involved in the game. And then that was it. I'd done the ACL. And whilst it wasn't an injury, not always an injury, a career-ending injury. In my case, it was. I just didn't recover fully from the surgery. I had 3 or 4 different operations. Egert Olsen became the manager of Wimbledon. I was not the player I once was because I couldn't really move too well. So I'd made a few substitute appearances. I remember being on the bench a couple of times and almost hoping not to come on because my knee was just all over the place. And then just made a decision. No, this is you need to stop.
Obviously, it's a shame, because you're still relatively young. You're what, 29, 30 at the time, I think?
Yeah, 28.
29.
Yeah.
So you could argue, yes, you kind of reached a peak, but some players say you don't even hit your peak till you're 29, 30, do you? So you're kind of almost getting on that. So was there no coming back? There's no way you felt you could get back in sort of playing again, or was it literally you're told, look, that's it, that's the end?
Well, I've been out for 2 years, over 2 years, and I couldn't see and I kept saying to the surgeon, right, I don't mind having more surgery, but you've got to start guaranteeing some positive outcomes here because it's demoralising. It's not, you have to surgery. It's not a week turnaround. It's a month, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. And I just felt the game had got away from me, or the game at the level I was used to playing at had got away from me.
Especially with your pace, and you're quite reliant on your speed and quickness. I'm guessing that would play a part.
Yeah, so it was. And I, as luck would have it, rightly or wrongly, I was doing a sports science degree through the PFA, the Players Union, which was just around the corner at Roehampton from Wimbledon. So we used to go there twice a week and study. End up graduating as I packed up really, and just decided to go into that world of sports science and try and help players have better careers and more successful careers.
Excellent. So you have a job working for Reading, is that right? You're at Reading as a sports scientist.
Wimbledon, went to Palace, then to Watford, and then to Reading. Reading was a very successful couple of seasons there with Steve Coppell, where we won the league and stayed in the Premier League. And
is it true that you were part of Roy Sanchez's Northern Ireland team for the Euro 2008 as a conditioning coach, weren't you?
That's right. So Laurie obviously had been a reserve team manager at Wimbledon when I was there, and got the Northern Ireland job. He played the first game. We played qualifying campaign, Iceland at home. Had a couple of Reading players playing. They beat us 3-0 in Belfast on a Saturday afternoon. It was awful. The fans were booing. It's horrendous. And then we had Spain on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. And on the Sunday, on the Monday morning, the newspapers were full of like Keith Gillespie and David Healy and everyone, and the goalkeeper Roy Carroll had all been out on the razzle Saturday, Sunday night. So Sanchez under severe pressure. We end up drafting Johnny Evans, a young kid from Manchester United, into the team. And somehow we beat Spain 3-2. Healy scores a hat-trick.
Wow.
It's just the most amazing night in Belfast. Actually had quite a decent qualifying campaign. But it's only a year. Great experience. And then Laurie went on to manage Fulham after that.
That's right. Brilliant. Excellent. And then after that, I'm looking at your sort of notes here. So 2012, 2013, you then a fitness coach for Nike Academy. What was that about?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened is really interesting. Along the way, I'd read in a lot of clubs, I'd experienced a lot of players, which you wouldn't necessarily assume, with mental health issues. Addictive behavioural problems, gambling problems, just really unhappy, strangely in a game that they should love. So we started a company called Think Fitness, and we did a lot of work discreetly working with individual players privately. And then we started building on that and started working with Red Bull as a sports brand. And then, did some consultancy work with some clubs through some employees I had around nutrition. And then someone introduced me to Nike. And they wanted to run this global football academy. And they wanted to use this global football academy to showcase all the best aspects of Nike. So it was a full-time residential program. We'd recruit from about 30 countries globally. But they'd be based in the UK, in St George's Park in the end, in England. And we'd play Manchester United, Barcelona. We'd host tournaments. We'd travel to Paris Saint-Germain. We'd do this amazing, and they'd film it and create videos. And we'd do training content and so on. So it's funny, off the back of a small business idea, what transpired.
Amazing.
So, end up, we got a lot of lads into the professional game, about 50 players globally, some in the UK and elsewhere, and had some really good staff as well. So I started off as a sports scientist or the fitness coach and helping putting the team together, and ended up being the academy or the coach. So I moved into coaching then.
Brilliant. And then after that, you were then doing some sort of academy work, player development work for the likes of Notts County, Spurs. And am I right in thinking you also helped out Kenny Jackett at Millwall a little bit, didn't you? During Kenny. It's ever decreasing circles football, and I'd worked at Watford with some good people like Nigel Gibbs and Ray Lewington and John McDermott, who works at the FA now. And I don't know how I'd come across Kenny, but anyway, Kenny rings me and said, can you help us out? I need to do some. He said, first of all, he said, can you just come and have a look at the lads? And it was towards the back end of the season. Come and see what's going on. And it was really hard because Ken wanted me to give him an evaluation of him. Yeah.
So
was this, sorry, John, was this for the physical or for the mental aspects?
No, it was more about the environment and about, I think Ken was struggling to, he was throwing so much information at the lads because all he could see was problems. And so I observed Kenny do a couple of matches, Luton away, and I said, Ken, like we just been into, I said, I can see what you're doing. There's so many things wrong. You just you're throwing everything at me. I said, but I think the lads are a little bit, you're bombarding them with information. So maybe I built a bit of trust in him. He said, okay, great. He had Joe Gallen as his assistant. He said, come in and help out of pre-season, which I did. I had a brilliant time with people like Paul Robinson. Neil Harris was a player at the time. Some good senior lads there. Alan Dunn from memory. And then he got some good loans in as well. And, Ken's a no-nonsense, tell it as it is. We would, pre-season, we started training at 7 a.m. We would do a conditioning session with me till about 7:30. We'd have breakfast. We'd then do football training from 10 till whatever. And then we'd do another conditioning session in the afternoon. So it was tough. Steve Morrison was there as well. But we got him into shape and they had a couple of good years when I worked with Kenny. And then I kind of like other things came along. So I had to withdraw from that. But I used to come and watch the games. And, there was a very good team to, pretty direct, I say, under Ken. But he got success.
Amazing, excellent, good stuff. John, I'm conscious that your dear lady, Mrs. Goodman, needs you to take her do some errands and taxi service.
I think we're all right. I think we might have 5 or 6. She just said she's going shopping first, so I might have a little bit longer.
Okay. So what we'll do, we want to try and ram this in the last 10-15 minutes, try and cram everything in. We want to go a very quick, your 1 to 11, your favourite Millwall team, and the rule is you have to pick yourself in the team as well, John. I know players were asked them to do this. They don't really like the idea of including themselves for some reason. I don't know why, but I need you to do that. And also, I've got some Q&A. I've got 8 questions from fans here that I want to throw in at the end. So we can try and squeeze it in before you go. Hopefully, Mrs. Goodman will be okay with that. So very quickly, what formation are you going for?
Well, I got to go for the favoured formation during my time, which was a 4-4-2 diamond, which has impacted like someone like Jimmy Carter as an out-and-out winger. So Jimmy,
of course.
Sadly, and he's a brilliant player, but I didn't play too long with Jimmy, so hopefully he went to Liverpool and Arsenal and etc. So I'm sure he'll forgive me that one.
It's a nice honourable mention that you mentioned Jimmy anyway, so I'm sure he'll be very pleased to hear that. So who have you got in goal then?
Well, again, I've gone Casey Keller. Although I must mention Brian Horn, Keith Brannigan, and Aidan Davison, all very good. But Casey, I think, was, at best, he was a very, very good goalkeeper for us.
Great choice. Again, great honourable mentions to the others there who also sort of played with. I'll tell you, go for a back four.
Yes.
We can go. Where do you want to start? Right back, left back? How do you want to do it?
Okay, I just get caveat that the selection is based upon players that I think the fans would like to see playing. All right, so there's a little bit of toughness there. But hopefully it'll make sense. So I've gone Rhino at right back. Keith Stevens,
which he did in the earlier times.
Earlier years right back rather than him at centre back, and so it enables me to put Kenny Cunningham at right-sided centre back. You see now, again,
that's interesting.
But Kenny, I think, was a better player at centre back. Believe it or not.
Centre back. Because interesting, towards the end of his career, he became a centre back, didn't he, as well? Right. A bit like Rono did. So very similar in that sort of way. So interesting. Who would you have alongside Kenny at the back then?
Well, this is a bit of a curveball, and you might not, but I want some tough cookies in my team, right? And whilst Colin Cooper was a very good left-sided centre back, I'm going to go for Pat Van Den Hout.
Brilliant choice. I like that one. Yeah.
Pat was a real good player, although he only had a year or two of us. Strange lad. But a tough cookie. But I can give honourable mentions to Alan McCleary and Steve Wood. But again, that was in my early years. But Pat Van Den Hout. And then I've got Ben Thatcher at left back. So I've got a tough, apart from Kendo, who's the soft one amongst them.
Well, if I was a forward, John, I wouldn't want to play against
you wouldn't want to play against that back four,
I'd be lucky to have my ankles, my Achilles at the end of it. But Ben Thatcher is my favourite left back of all time. So
mentioned to Ian Dawes, who's a good player. Dawes was a very good player, but Thatcher's representative, I think, of the Millwall fans. So
excellent. So in the diamond-shaped midfield, you're going to go for, John. Who are you playing in the holding sort of the defensive midfield position?
Can only be one man. The legend that is Terry Hurlock.
Hey. Well done.
Although he wasn't at his best when I played with him, he was a fantastic character and a fantastic player. So he gets ahead of Andy May and Andy Roberts. But
brilliant.
I've got to have him in the team because if I'm going to play in this team, I want to play with Terry Hurlock.
I'd say at the moment, the way this team's looking like at the moment, I think not only they'd be good at football, I think they'd be good in the fight as well. It all kicked off, wouldn't they?
And we're going to have a great night at the end of it, So I think
exactly. So I presume you're kind of going for not the out-and-out wingers, we're kind of going for the side of the diamond, the left side and the right side.
The right side has to be Alex Ray.
Alex Ray, great choice.
Yeah, Alex Ray has to be in there.
And on the other side?
I'm trying to get Mark Kennedy, E.T. in there. I've ended up Paul Kerr, as I mentioned, but I've gone Les Briley. Again, because Les, my first year as very good Millwall player, very reliable and a brilliant person. Do you know what I mean? And a Millwall legend. So I've got to have him in the team. Yeah.
Brilliant. And he's still around in the kind of in hospitality at Millwall at the moment. The fans really look warm to him. So in that attacking midfield position, the top of the diamond, who are you going for?
It has to be Malcolm Allen.
Malcolm Allen, great choice.
Yeah.
Love that.
Ian Bogey.
Ian Bogey,
Ian Bogey, honourable mention. E.T. would be an honourable mention on that. Paul Kerr.
Brilliant, excellent. And then we go for a front two. So obviously we're going to pick yourself there, John. So you're going to play. That's in the team. Probably the nicest guy out of the team so far. Everyone looks like a bunch of nutters. And you've got John there. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, I'll just be sitting in the corner having a shandy.
Yeah, when it all kicks off, you're one that kind of walks away from the camera.
Exactly that. Yeah, I'll just throw it in. Well, I'd say Casey, Kenny, and myself are the tame ones amongst that lot.
Yeah, definitely. So before you give us the player you like to play up front with, is there any honourable mentions for any strikers, any other forwards?
Oh yeah. In all truth, as you rightly say, I feel a bit. I shouldn't be ahead of Chris Armstrong, John McGinley, Jamie Morley, Dave Mitchell. You know, there's some good strikers there. So
I think you've been, I think you've been a bit hard on yourself there. I think you're definitely warrant a place in this team. Honestly,
I think the partner I've picked, I think we was a good partnership, albeit for not a long period of time, but definitely brought out the best in each other.
Yeah, who's that then?
Only one man, Mr. Sheringham.
Yay, great choice.
That'll be Teddy.
Big Teddy. And I must admit, during that first season, when I sort of used to watch you two play together, and you mentioned about his attributes and him being very good in the air and everything else, but I think there was a nice little balance there, and having you sort of playing alongside him and make those runs in the channels and do what you did, I think there was a nice little balance. So that team looks really, really good. So just to retract them very quickly, so we've got Keller in goal, we've got Reiner at right back, Ben Thatcher left back, we've got Kenny Cunningham, Pat Van den Hauwe at the back, we've got Terry Hurlock in the holding midfield position. On the side of the diamond, we've got Alex Ray, Les Briley. I mean, two box-to-box sort of players. You can't get better than that. Got Malcolm Allen, on the top of the diamond, playing behind a front two of Teddy Sheringham and Jon Goodman. That's a fantastic team. Brilliant. I like that. Excellent. Now, if you've still got time, we want to just go through the Q&A from the fans, because I know they'll be a bit gutted if I didn't get a chance to ask you this. So now, again, I must apologise, because there are some good questions here. There are some cheeky ones as well. Okay, John. So I'm sure you've had a few of these before. So the first question from Hobbsy is, how big was the transition from Bromley to Millwall? He wants to know.
Okay. Strangely, it didn't seem that big, but I think I was very lucky that the good players around me made it easier. So I assumed that anybody that played non-league could play professional football, because the people that I was playing with just made it so easy for me. So you make a run, they put it exactly where you needed it put. So, it was obviously, a lot easier than I anticipated, albeit when I was then in the second season, I was needed to be the main man. I wasn't ready. So then it suddenly really dawned on me, John, you got to polish your craft a little bit here.
Okay. Now, I don't blame you saying pass to the next question, okay, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I asked the group, what questions do you have for Jon Goodman? A guy called Wizard stepped up and said, could you ask him, what does Roseanne's Nuna taste like?
Yeah.
You care to answer that one?
I've been happily married for 30 or 26, 27 years, so I've not tasted Rosanna's Nuna. I'm not sure the other Jon Goodman has either.
Yeah, exactly. Next question I've got from Ben Quickenden. He asks, did anyone try and beat Steve Harrison's shit in the pint glass party trick? What's that about?
Oh man, it was a legendary thing that Steve did, and it cost him his job at Ipswich away, which I was there.
Really?
So Steve, and listen, looking back, it's probably not the best thing you should be doing on a Friday night before the game. But Steve was just such a joker, and he could aim his shit with military precision. All right, so unfortunately, Bruce Riot wasn't at the game, so we travelled to Ipswich on a Friday night. We're giving Harry stick, like Nick McCarthy, all the senior boys, like, come on, Harry, when are you going to do this trick for us? He said, I'll do it tonight. Come to my hotel room. Come to my room after we've eaten, right? We turn up, we knock on the door. He opens the door. He's got his underpants over his head, and they're like goggles like this, right? He's got a towel wrapped around him as a cape, and he's got his pants on. And then he's got a chest of, not a big wardrobe, but like a chest of drawers and a towel underneath with a glass. We go in. He says, right now, the great Harrisona, or whatever, I can't remember what he called himself now, the great Harry will produce. And he starts to have a shit. And then he goes, and he pulls it back in again. And then it just starts gushing out into the glass, all over the glass, all over the towel.
Oh my God.
We are screaming, right? As you know. He grabs the glass, jumps off, grabs the glass, starts chasing after us. We go sprinting out of the door. as bad luck would have it, he's chased us down the corridor. Ian McNeil, the assistant manager's coming round the corner, and Ian just looked at Harry.
Oh, no.
So we knew we was in the shit. And I think we drew.
Literally, yeah.
Literally, yeah. So he got the sack the following, day after that game, which it killed the atmosphere of the club, because it could have been dealt with internally, and Bruce felt he had to make a stand, but it just we lost all respect for Bruce and Ian off the back of that. Really. Harry lost his job with England as well.
Wow,
so, but no one was ever capable of following in their footsteps.
No, exactly. That's the answer to your question, Ben. Next question. We had a Shakin Stevens, we had an Elvis Goodman in one squad. Was you ever all shook up in a game? From Mick, that is, sorry.
Yeah, all shook up.
I don't know how you can answer that.
No, I got kicked in the head a few times, but yeah, and
yeah?
I not all shook up on the pitch. There was a shook up moment when I made my debut, or I think it was the second game. Bruce went after Malcolm Allen, and it was terrifying, and for a young lad. Like they went toe to toe. Bruce just decided he was gonna go after Malcolm. He just absolutely. Wow. There was other stuff going on off the pitch, and Bruce just was like, it was a premeditated thing, and he dragged Malcolm off, said, "You ain't playing again," and he turned around to me and said, "Right, get stripped off, you're going on," So that probably did shake me up a little bit, but yeah,
just a bit. I've got Matt Richards just asked a question: do you have any football boots still, and are you free to play for his team this Friday night?
I've stopped wearing football boots. Even as a coach, I'd wear trainers now, because they're just so as you get older, they're just uncomfortable. And I play a lot of other sports now. I don't play football because it just frustrates the life out of me. What I can't do, So I play golf, I play racquetball, I play different activities, paddle tennis, whatever. But I just won't play football.
Brilliant. And Malcolm Chapman asks, how good was Andy May and Malcolm Allen in the team you played in?
Yeah, quite the unsung in some ways. Andy May really made the team function, no doubt about that. Again, taught Andy Roberts probably how to play that position. So that, as much as you can coach players, sometimes you're better off just copying someone who's doing it far better than you. And Malcolm, he was just technically so good. He just control was outstanding. My first season, right? So Bruce decides, to lighten the mood, we're gonna have a head tennis competition. Head tennis, basically, is ball receiving, like obviously with a football. And there's, as luck would have it, I draw Malcolm Allen in the first round, and so I serve. He just boots it back over the net, 1-0. He then serves. I can just about get it back. Then he kills it off. He beat me. It was embarrassing. Just thought,
is that good technically? Was he?
He was that good technically, and he. What was nice about Malcolm, he was very confident, but not in a nasty way. He kind of like, but he
knew how good he was.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he knew he was quality.
He seemed like one of the very few players that can get away with scoring with toe punts. I don't know if you noticed that at all. He's got a few goals like toe punt, didn't he?
He was clever. He was like, a lot of people say footballers ain't smart, and then we may not be academically brilliant, but we're very sharp. And Malcolm could read situations quicker than most, and would have the confidence to play with a little bit of disguise and back himself. And you're right, so he's a real craftsman, very good.
Brilliant. And the second part to his question was, who was the best player you played with at Millwall? Obviously, we mentioned your team there, so I guess it's got to be one of those.
Yeah, I can't look beyond Teddy. I can't, what he achieved for England, the clubs he played for, it wasn't a coincidence. He was that good. And he was very knowledgeable on the game and how to make the game work for him.
Brilliant. And last question from Phil Clark. In your previous roles of sports science and sports psychology, can players really benefit from the mental coaching as well as the physical coaching?
Yeah, I don't think you can coach players mentally, but what you can be is hopefully a person of trust to them. And what I mean by that is a lot of players are really insecure. As you mentioned, like when you pick a team, you're always doubting yourself, strangely. And I've worked with some really good players that are really on top of their game and suffer with a lot of anxiety about going to fail. It's not, they're so far outside their comfort zone. So I think, and what you try and teaching people the whole time is they're perfectly natural. It's not normal to rock up in front of 40,000 people and kick a ball around. That's not normal. So rightly so, if it means anything to you, you're going to be a little bit outside your comfort zone. It's how you manage yourself through that. I've been, fortunate and unfortunate in some ways to work with like Sporting Chance, which is Tony Adams' charity. And you've seen, I've worked, high profile people like Paul Gascoigne and, a brilliant person, but the side effects of being a professional footballer can often be, a really distorted view of the world and a distorted, social life. So listen, I'm thankful I came out of the game in a healthy state, physically and mentally. But it does prey on your mind quite a bit.
Yeah, excellent. So that's the end of the Q&A. I think we might have a minute left to play one more game, if that's okay with you. And if there's one game you'd like to see, what game would it be? Millwall game, sorry.
We had some brilliant games, Millwall, but I think there was a 4-4 game against Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup in my first season, which had a bit of everything, some good players on the pitch on the day, and it was fantastic atmosphere.
Excellent. I haven't seen this yet, so it's the first time. Well, obviously I saw it at the time, but I haven't seen it back since. So is there our chance to see it very quick? It's only for a minute or so. Let's watch it now.
In blue went ahead after 50 seconds. A comedy of errors. Paul Stevenson smiling at the end of it, though. Good advantage played from the referee. Sheffield Wednesday quickly level. David Hurst, 21st goal of the season. Nice drag back when the ball came into the area, but both teams had hardly warmed up yet. After half an hour, creeping in to put Sheffield Wednesday back in front, Trevor Francis, Nigel Pearson's shot palmed upwards. 2-2 after 40 minutes. Teddy Sheringham with the acrobatic overhead kick. Alex Ray with the perfect 10 on his back, scoring for Millwall. Sheffield Wednesday went back in front 10 minutes into the second half. Nigel Pearson stabbing it in. That was the 5th goal of the game. 4 minutes later, the 6th, the ball worked in from the left. Sheringham made it look easy, 3-3. Now both teams had a rest until 5 minutes from time. Then Viv Anderson proved there's still a lot of football left in him, heading Sheffield Wednesday back in front again, 4-3.
But Ray had the last word from Sheringham's shot. 4-4, the final score.
Wow, what a game. Eight goals. And you mentioned players like Viv Anderson, Trevor Francis, and young Nigel Pearson at the time. It's incredible, really. You see those sort of those names, those players. What a game.
I didn't realise that. I just remember like it was just so because it was that time of the year where the floodlights come on, the conditions were a little bit wet, the ball was zipping around, and fantastic game. Yeah, really good.
Unbelievable. John, on behalf of obviously all the Millwall fans watching, listening to this, who are lucky enough to watch you at the old den, the new den during your period with us, I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of the heart for you coming on and sharing these moments with us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and reliving those moments again. And whatever you do in the future, I really do hope you come back to Millwall and maybe do some work with us, with our players. And God, they do need some mental help at the moment, physical work. So maybe give Gary Rowett a call, see if he can give him a hand, But any last sort of words for the Millwall fans? Any last sort of message you want to give them?
No, I guess, although it's a long time ago, just thank you for all the wonderful support, and just fingers crossed they hang in there in the playoffs and have some success this season.
Absolutely brilliant, John. You're an absolute legend. Thank you very, very much. We'll keep in touch, and I wish you all the very, very best for the future. Take care.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.